A want is something that you don't have to survive, you just want it. A need is something that is more concrete, is something that you need in order to be able to survive.
Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome to another episode of NVTV. Today we are continuing our youth education series with Joey, who was the director of the youth programs at Eastside Community Ministry for a decade. And while she was there, you did a lot of work with junior high and high school age kids, and a lot of that had to do with financial education and getting them prepared for adulthood and being able to move out on their own and be successful. So we have her here today to talk to us a little bit about wants and needs and what the difference is and why it's so important. So without any further ado, Joey, why don't you just tell us a little bit, let's define them first. So what's a want, what's a need?
Sure. Well, and this is where it gets tricky because there are a lot of things in the world where you can define them in either category. And if you get creative, you can make an argument for something. But basically, a want is something that you don't have to survive, you just want it. A need is something that is more concrete, is something that you need in order to be able to survive. So for example, a need would be shelter, food, your basic necessities, whereas a want is something that perhaps is not a necessity, like an iPhone or a nice car.
So why is it important to know the difference between a want and a need and really identify what's what as somebody's thinking about whether it's a budget or just how they're going to be spending their money?
Sure. A young person who has some money for the first time, whether it's a young person moving out on their own and needing to create a budget for the first time, or whether it's a young person who maybe is still living at home and has an allowance or a job for the first time, they need to be able to figure out the priorities in order to figure out how they're going to spend their money. So a young person, perhaps their needs are being met by mom and dad. The shelter is covered, the water bill, the electricity bill, that kind of thing. But there are certain needs in their life that maybe they have for the first time. Perhaps they're driving, so they might need car insurance. They might need gasoline for that car. They may need some sort of cell phone in order to be able to communicate with their family about arrival times and transportation and sort of as a safety tool. Where the wants and the needs come into play is, let's say I am a 16-year-old who is driving for the first time and mom and dad really want me to be able to communicate with them about when I'm coming and going and that kind of thing for safety. And so a cell phone would probably be considered a need at that point. No, it's not something that we have to have for survival, but it certainly can be used as a tool for safety. And so in that case, I would say, if our kids were coming to us and saying, I need a cell phone, I would say, okay, that probably is a need. However, when the conversation becomes, is it a want or is it a need? Okay, do I need the iPhone 20 with all the bells and whistles and it can do everything but your dishes for you? Or do I need a flip phone that I can contact mom and dad in a hurry? Probably the need is going to be that flip phone, whereas the want is going to be that iPhone. But again, then that's where the priority comes into play, where you decide how to spend your money. Okay, I need a cell phone. Do I need the flip phone or do I want the iPhone? Well, if I have enough money and that's my priority, then I can spend it on the want.
So technically speaking, a phone is not a need, and you alluded to that, I think, earlier.
Correct.
Like, you don't need that to survive.
Sure.
But the truth is that we need that to kind of get by in our world. Like you said, as a 16-year-old starting out to drive,
Sure.
It's a wise thing to have for communication, for safety.
Sure.
But truth be told, you don't need a car. You don't need to be driving. I mean, there are other options, but they are important. So how does this start to play out for someone who's, say, getting ready to graduate and really set out?
Sure. Well, I mean, that's really truly when they need to sit down and write a bit of a budget. And it's going to come down to a list of wants and needs. They need to find out the costs for all their needs, and they need to look those up. So when they're sitting down for the first time with that paycheck or the thought of a paycheck coming in 2 weeks from their first job, they really need to think about what are their needs, the housing, all of their utilities, all of the things that they do need to survive. And then once that paycheck has been spent on the needs, that's when the wants come into play, when you can prioritize, like in our previous example, I need a cell phone in order to survive in the world. Do I have enough money for the flip phone? Probably. Leftover. Do I have enough money for the iPhone? I may need to save for that.
Mm-hmm. And it may be that you have enough money at the iPhone, but there's another item that you need more than an iPhone. And
sure.
And so it can get kind of complicated. There's kind of a little bit of a gray area in there, and you may have a number of priorities, and you really just need, like you said, need to sit down and go through that list.
Oh, sure.
And really just think about, okay, which would I rather have maybe I can't afford an iPhone, but maybe I'd rather have extra gas money to get to Columbus,
cable, or
Netflix,
cable is not something that is necessarily a need, but for someone out on their own for the first time, they really need to evaluate those wants. And it could be the iPhone, it could be Hulu, it could be extra money to go to the movies on the weekend. Those are all needs. But I stressed to my youth that when they are doing their budget for the first time, when they're getting that first paycheck, the first thing they have to do is set aside the money for their needs. If they don't meet those, then that's when they get into trouble, when they start spending on going to the movies and, oh, well, I've got my first paycheck. Let's take all my friends out on a Friday night, or let's go out to the movies and blow a bunch of money and take my friends with me. Yeah, that's fun, but that's not going to pay your rent. And most people, when it boils down to it, I kind of put it to the teenagers this way, that would you rather have a place to live, or would you rather go to the movies? Yeah. It comes down to priorities and understanding the difference between the needs and then what's left over for the wants.
Is there anything else that you'd want to add? I think you've pretty much...
It's almost kind of fun to play devil's advocate, because there are a lot of things, like you said, there's a gray area. And so let's say our kids are driving for the first time, and they come and say, I need a cell phone, and I need the iPhone. By that time, it's going to be the iPhone 400, and it has tracking device on it, so you'll know where I am, and it has all the bells and whistles. Mom, I need it. You certainly, I think, can make a case for a lot of things to be in that gray area. But everybody has common sense, and everybody can understand that there really is a difference between wants and needs. And, you can get by on a lot of needs that people don't seem to understand. There are a lot of resources in our community. Like, for example, I pointed out to the youth that we have a terrific bus system here in Zanesville. So if you live in the city, you actually don't need a car. Now, is it convenient? Can it get you from point A to point B perhaps faster on your schedule? Sure. Again, that's where the priority comes in, and you need transportation. What kind do you want?
All right, well, Joey, thanks so much for sitting down with us and talking us through that. Lots of good information, and certainly something that even those of us who have perhaps passed our youth a while ago need to hear and can learn from. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments, and we will get back with Joey and get answers for you. See you next time on NVTV.